There were shifts. There was wiggling in the balance of meaning and in the direction that occurred in the lives of the people of God then and the people of God today. Things could never be the same again. There was new stability. There was transformed identity. And there was power, God-given power, to venture into unknown and frightening future. And these critical events were turning points. They were turning points for the people of God, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, a minute ago, bless Mickey's heart, she passed out a little piece of paper to everybody. Everybody got it? Hold it up. Reach in front of you and get a pencil out of the pew rack. Okay? We're going to have an interactive thing this morning. Everybody got one? What I want you to do is hold it sideways, and I want you to draw a line across horizontally. And then at one end, I want you almost at the end, not quite to the end, to draw a line vertically that intersects it. And at the other end, I want you to draw an intersecting line. And on the right end somewhere, on the left end, as you look at it, I want you just to write your birthday there. Just write your birthday. And on the right end, I want you to write today's date, 2/7/16. Now, in between those two dates, I want you to draw a couple, 3, maybe 4 vertical lines that intersect your lifeline, because that's what that long line is. Your birthday, today's date, that's your lifeline. Mine would be 9/4/48 to 2, whatever today is, 7/16. You know, but those other lines in between, they represent critical points in your life. Marriage, children, grandchildren, the loss of somebody very dear to you. Critical points in your life where you had to shift. You had to adjust. You were like that canoe. Everything got rocked. And we had to shift to keep things in balance. You know, what they were in my life, I know. What they are in your life, you know. But we know that God was pivotal. And He was acting. And these lines, these critical points in life, shape us. You know, what connections do you and I have between memory of what was and hope of what's going to be? What connection do we have between the history and our life and the promise of what it's going to be? And if we're honest and if we think about it, what baggage do we have in our canoe that needs to be adjusted a little bit and shifted a little bit so that perhaps our lives can have more stability and perhaps our lives can have more balance? Now, I want you to look very carefully at that paper that you did, and do you notice that each time you had a turning point in your life, it's represented by what on that piece of paper? It's a cross. It's a cross. You know, sometimes during the actual events, sometimes during the experiences that change and mold our lives, we're overwhelmed with joy, or we're overwhelmed with hurt and pain. And we're overwhelmed sometimes with confusion. And sometimes a veil seems to hide God from our eyes and the loving care and the mercy that He has. But then when we look back When we look back from a new perspective, we can see that God was there with us all the time, that He guided us, and He helped our lives maintain the stability that maybe we didn't know we needed, but guess who did? God did. And He knew what it was to give to us. So those crosses indicate in our lives the guiding presence of God. Think about what we've been studying on Wednesday night and God's guiding presence from the very first chapter of the book of Ruth and the life of Naomi and Ruth and Boaz and all the other characters, all the way to when Ruth and Boaz get married. And never once does God appear overtly, does He? But you always know that He's there and you recognize Him. So it's this awareness of God's presence, real presence, that gives us nourishment when we can face times of suffering and conflict and confusion. It's the presence of Christ that gives us courage to share the love that He has given to us and to serve others in His name. It's Christ in our midst that gives us power to face the chaos and confusion and the rocky waters that life throws at us. Today is Transfiguration Sunday, and we celebrate. We celebrate the reality of Christ's presence with us, and today we begin the descent. We begin the descent down the mountain that was such a wonderful experience that we experienced a month ago in Bethlehem at the manger. That's mountaintop. That's looking at a baby. Looking at a baby makes everybody happy, you know. And we begin our descent down from that mountaintop to walk with Jesus and to walk with those disciples as they head to Jerusalem. Wednesday night, we begin our journey from the shining face of that child in the manger in Bethlehem, and we go to see the agonized face of Jesus on the cross. The going gets tough, but we know that's when Christians get going. And during Lent, we look back to the mountaintop in order to walk into the valley, confident. Oh, how confident we can be that the presence and the power of Christ goes with us. Oliver Wendell Holmes was a justice on the Supreme Court for 30 years back in the early 1900s. And he once said that in order to understand what is happening today or what will happen in the future, we must look backwards. And in order for us to find renewed strength to face a fearful present and to move forward towards an uncertain future, we must look back to the mountain where the truth was so gloriously revealed. Looking back, the Hebrews could see God's presence in the shining face of Moses as he came down from the holy mountain with the commandments of God in his hands. Moving forward, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, they had a vision way out in front of them. They had a vision of the promised land that He had for them. Looking back, the disciples could see the transfigured face of Jesus as He was revealed as the intersecting point between the law of God and the prophecy concerning the Messiah. And moving forward, they began their journey with Christ to that cross. Moving forward, Peter and James and John didn't see it all clearly, though. They still had a veil before their eyes. They couldn't see clearly. The veil blocked out some because they were afraid of being arrested. They were afraid of condemnation. They were human, friends. They were afraid of death. Now, let me give you the good news to close with today. That's not the good news, but let me give you the good news. We can see clearly. This gives us the good news right here. We know how the story is going to end. We can see the cross and we can see the empty tomb as shining beacons, beacons of light that urge us onward, and we can move forward, not hesitatingly, not tentatively, but we can move forward with vigor, and we can move forward boldly. Christ has removed the veil from our eyes, and we have history. Hear the words that we repeat so often. Christ has died. Christ has risen. That's history. And then we have promise. And what's next? Christ will come again. And we have assurance that no matter where we go in our journey, no matter how hard our boat rocks, and no matter how cold the water is that's underneath it, Jesus is going to be with us. It doesn't matter. We've got that promise. And I'll leave you with his words, where he says, "Lo, I'm with you always to the close of the age." In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.